Hello, BookTube! Welcome to another episode of Better Read with Saul. Today I'm going to be doing my premiere review as a booktuber, where I talk about my thoughts and impressions about the first novel I've read here in 2019. Now, what book has that honor, you may be asking? Well, drumroll please. That would be The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. Now, I didn't really know much about this book going into this, other than not only did this one win the Hugo for Best Novel, but so did the second in the series, and then the third completed the trifecta. Now, as you may be aware, the SFF community has a few big awards and many smaller ones, but the Hugo is the most prestigious. So for someone to win it back to back to back, like Jemisin did, is fucking phenomenal. I don't think it's been done before, in fact. So I knew this had a lot of critical and popular acclaim behind it, and was curious to see if it stood up to all the hype. And I would say, for the most part, yes. I did enjoy this book a fair bit, so let's dive into it. So I don't want to talk too much about the plot of this book to avoid spoilers, but basically it's set on a world known as the Stillness, which is an ironic name as it is very geologically unstable, with earthquakes and volcanic eruptions being a relatively common occurrence. And then there are the titular fifth seasons. Every few hundred years, the world basically turns up these natural disasters and climate change all the way to 11 in an effort to kill off humanity. As such, the world is littered with all sorts of ruins and remnants of past civilizations, such as these obelisks that float around in the sky. Then, 2,000 years before the story starts, the Sunset Empire comes along, and it's managed to survive, rebuild, and thrive through several seasons, even having hydroelectric power, which isn't something you see every day in epic fantasy. And it's done this through two main methods. One is through the Stone Lore, which is a sort of biblical survivalist guide. And secondly, and most importantly, is through the orogenies. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. Typical fantasy problem. These are people who are born with the ability to control the energies of the earth. They are heavily viewed with suspicion and hatred by the common citizenry, who have a slur for them, Roga, and massively oppressed by the Empire, who trains them but takes away their names, giving them new ones based on rocks and minerals, and forces them to engage in eugenics practices and just forces all sorts of degradations upon them. Much like the X-Men and the mages in the Dragon Age series of games, these work as a sort of super-powered allegory for real-life oppressed groups, in this case particularly African-American slaves. So as a sort of personal aside, I just wanted to say, I remember a couple years before I had my reading slump, seeing the starts of the backlash towards the heterogeneity of the fantasy and science fiction works, and kind of agreeing with it, as even I'd been getting kind of tired of the same old Anglo-Western European setting and characters, and I think that might have even contributed a little to my slump. And anyway, there were a few more diverse books starting to come out when I began my slump, but from what I've seen and heard, it's really exploded over these last few years, and I'm just really happy and excited to see all these diverse authors and characters and settings, and I'm really looking forward to diving into it. Throughout the book, we follow three of these orogenes. One is Demaya, a young girl who has just revealed her powers and is sent to the Fulcrum to learn how to control them and essentially be re-educated. Second is Cyanite, who is sent on a relatively routine mission with an older and more powerful Orogene. And lastly is Essen, whose young son is murdered and daughter kidnapped by her husband when they reveal themselves to be Orogenes. We follow them in roughly alternating chapters told from their perspectives, which is where we have my first and main issue with this book. So I've never been a fan of second person, the you perspective. And this book starts with a bit of it in the prologue, although the way it's written as a framing device is kind of fourth wall breaky, and I was fine with it. Then the first chapter opens, and it's from Essen's perspective, but told in second person. All her chapters are in second person. My reaction was pretty much, well, shit. I struggled through her sections at times trying to reconcile this, and as well written as it is, as compelling as the characters can be, I probably wouldn't have finished this book if it had been totally in second person, and it is very well written. Jemisin has a poetic yet crisp writing style. Her imagery is particularly evocative. She mixes humor in reasonably well with the darker themes of the story to prevent it from becoming too overwhelming, although she included a few modernisms that I found a little awkward reading. The world building is incredibly intriguing. Orogeny is one of, if not the most unique forms of geomancy I've ever seen. But where this story stands out is the characters. You can really see Jemisin's background as a psychologist coming through, how they deal with their trauma that they've had in the past and continue to have throughout the story. Their emotions are subtle at the times, but still manage to jump off the page. They're not afraid to show them, and they feel real and grounded in how they think and act and move forward. I would definitely say that this is a more character-driven story than plot-driven, which I am okay with. There's a lot of walking to different places and talking, which I'm a big fan of George R.R. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire. It's my favorite fantasy series, but like in that series, sometimes you wish the editing was a little tighter. You're kind of like, okay, let's move on already. Plot is intriguing. One big point I guessed relatively early on. The other twist, main twist, I sort of saw coming, but I didn't quite put all the pieces together, and certain things had me second guessing myself, so it was well told. The thing is, the pacing, most of the plot progression occurs in the last third 25% of the book, so I read through the last half a lot quicker than I did the first half. So for my final thoughts on the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin, as I said at the beginning of this, I did really quite enjoy this book, although part of me does wonder if I don't just respect it more as a work of art than truly love it. But regardless, I will definitely be checking out the sequels in the hopefully near-ish future and would absolutely recommend reading this. I'm not the biggest fan of the Goodreads BookTube 5-star system, but I haven't totally found one that I think works that much better. For this, I would give it 4 out of 5 stars. Alright, so that'll be the sun setting on this review. Tell me what you thought of the book if you've read the 5th season, and I will see y'all next time. Saul, signing off.